what the heck is going on? We have the weirdest set of news stories today. It's crazy. I feel like Zelda is almost out, and so people are kind of just losing it. All right, we got insane stealth drops showing up on a Switch out of nowhere. Nobody expected them. Honestly, a good look for the rest of the year. And then we have Microsoft's head honcho saying crazy stuff about Nintendo and the platform over on the Switch side of things, plus some really interesting new news bits that just dropped. So what's going on, everybody? Good morning, Mario, and good morning, Switch fans. Throwing off a little bit because I had to right hand this. I'm left-handed, if you didn't know. But if I left-hand it, you can't see the family crest, all right? This is a really awkward mug to drink out of, but you know, it's that time of year, baby. So what's up, everybody? Hit that like button if you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This is your hub for everything Nintendo Switch and the best place for Tears of the Kingdom. Don't cry, it's very close, and I got you covered with all the best tips, guides, tricks, and more. Also, I have some super special limited edition Good Morning Mario 500th episode merch that is running out quickly. If you want to grab it, I'll put a link in the description down below. It's very, very nice, very, very cozy, very, very soft, very, very exclusive, and very, very fun. Anyways, let's kick it off with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I want to start off with this one right here because I found this fascinating. Y'all remember Pokemon? I'm talking about the original Pokemon. I know you know Pokemon, but back when I was a boy, there was Pokemon Red and Blue. How many of you were even alive back then? Nintendo apparently had a bone to pick with the Pokedex that you would find from Tiger Electronics at your Target or your Toys R Us. Do you remember this thing? I never got one, but I always wanted one. I got my Game Boy and I got Pokemon Red and Blue, and then I was into the card game like crazy. But I saw kids with the Pokedex, and I wanted one just to keep track of Pokemon, and then I realized like the Game Boy game is so much more Pokemon than the Pokedex, even though that's the thing that Ash has. But apparently Nintendo wanted to try and stop the Pokedex from releasing because they thought it would combat and steal sales of the Game Boy. They thought if you could go have a Pokedex, why would you play the Pokemon games? That's just absolutely insane to me because the games are so much more involved, and if anything, I think the Pokedex just enhances the games. But I thought this was really kind of a fun story. They say that Tiger Electronics, Hasbro Toys had to fight Nintendo every step of the way to get this out there. Little Pokemon news for you back in the old days. We talked the other day about how Midnight Suns was canceled for Switch. The Marvel XCOM strategy game was supposed to be a big, nice get for the system, a nice third-party edition. Sadly, it was canceled. And so some people have started to worry and wonder about another big third-party game, and rightfully so. Like, every big third-party game ends up getting canceled or vanishes for Switch. So will the same fate befall Hogwarts Legacy, which despite the crazy controversy around the release of that game, it did sell insanely well and it reviewed pretty good too. But according to Nate Drake over on the Fama Boards forums, he says that Hogwarts remains in active development and has been making fine progress on Switch. He says the cancellation of Midnight Suns was circulating last year soon after the game bombed. And so it does sound like we have a little bit of an answer here, that perhaps the reason that they couldn't put this thing on Switch did in fact have more to do with monetary concerns and keeping the team together for the port development, or outsourcing the port and paying for it, rather than the Switch being able to handle it. Or maybe it was a case of both, where it was going to cost too much to make it fit on Switch, and because the game didn't sell well, which is a bummer because it's an excellent card-based strategy game, they're not able to make it happen. But if you're looking forward to Hogwarts Legacy, despite delays, despite coming out after the PS5, after the PS4, the Switch version is supposedly swimming along just fine. Nemo and Dora are ushering it in, just keep swimming style, to its July 25th release date, despite the old school ports, PS4 and Xbox One, coming out on April 4th. This game is still not on Switch, but apparently it will be, and it won't be canceled, which, phew, good. Something third party substantial on Switch. But wait, do you hear the buzzer? A surprise drop, a stealth drop, and it's not even an indie direct, which we shouldn't even talk about because the last one was so darn disappointing. Anyhow, this isn't Hollow Knight, this is a third-party game. And this one's a big surprise because it's not something that's ever really been discussed or rumored for Switch, although when you think about it, it's a fantastic fit. Kind of like 2/3 of a fit. I'll get to that in a second, but Dark Pictures Anthology Man of Medan dropped on Switch yesterday. Boom, just out there. It's available for $19.99, which is a great price. They're not trying to milk you. They're not going for the original retail price. They're not Switch taxing you. They're just saying, hey, this game came out a few years ago. Boom. Now, if you're not familiar with Dark Pictures Anthology, This is Supermassive Games, the people that made Until Dawn. Took a while, but I did love that game, and honestly, it's their best game. That one had Hayden Panettiere as sort of the cover girl, and it went on to be a really awesome choose-your-own-adventure, narrative-driven game with really engaging gameplay. And then they moved on to these shorter titles, but more of them. I feel like they lost a little bit of their charm, but they did really emphasize co-op, and you can play these things online or offline with your friends, which does make them better. There's been a bunch of Dark Pictures Anthology releases since Man of Medan, so in theory, if this does okay, we could get a bunch more. Now, it's not cloud, it's just eShop download, which is great, but they do note on the eShop page, and I've never seen this before, 24 frames per second. Okay, that's like a movie. In some ways, this is horrible, but in some ways, you're just watching this for the most part and kind of making binary choices like, do you want to run left? Do you want to run right? Do you want to be sassy? Do you want to be nice? Do you want to be stealthy? Do you want to be like, run, stay, grab their hand, don't. Like, I don't think the 24 frames per second here will hurt it. At the same time, good on them for letting us know. It's really down in the fine print on the eShop page, but you can see it there that the Switch version does run at 24 frames per second. They did everything they could to just squeeze this thing on Switch. And if the Midnight Suns cancellation didn't convince you, maybe this thing having to be 24 FPS, can't even get to 30, maybe that will convince you that, yeah, the Switch's time is running out. But I do think it's really nice that we got a stealth drop from a third party, and honestly, this would have been something that Nintendo threw in a Direct, so I'm glad that we get it here. It saves that space, and we get it right now. Like, many more third parties should just put their game on Switch. You don't need a long lead up, you don't need a high MSRP, just lower it in on $20. Let us know if the frame rate sucks up front, make sure it's not cloud, and hey, we might give it a go. I will let you know that Man of Medan is one of the worst stories in the Dark Pictures Anthology, but it's still a decently fun time, especially with friends, and it's kind of cool, and if you want to see the rest of the stories, maybe you should support this. They should also put Until Dawn on the Switch, because that's the best game, honestly, and it's the best game Supermassive has ever made, and this was previously like a Sony thing, and now it came to Xbox with the Dark Pictures Anthology, and it's also nice that it's on Switch, so I really do like it. Alright, let's get even weirder with Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer is a good guy. You know, he reminds me of Reggie when Reggie's not a Nintendo ninja, but instead of a Nintendo executive, Phil Spencer, he tries to be open, he tries to be a man of the people, he tries to really tell it how it is. And man, this guy has had to try and sell a really stale bill of goods. Redfall just came out and it tanked. Microsoft and Xbox have not had a win in quite a while in terms of an exclusive game, and despite the platform selling pretty good, and despite Game Pass being excellent, they are struggling. Phil Spencer had an interview where he said something I found mind-blowing, because I don't really know of a time where a head executive has just admitted defeat like this. It's very ballsy, it's also very honest, and I think it sets up just how far Nintendo has climbed this generation. Spencer said, "We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. The truth of the matter is, when you're third place in the console market and the top two players are as strong as they are, there's not much you can do." So he basically just self-affirmed that Nintendo beats Microsoft. Now, that's been the case in the past, but for a while in the Wii U era, even the Wii era at times, it was looking like Nintendo would be third chump forever. I think this is fascinating as someone that has followed Nintendo since I was a wee baby boy 30 years ago, to see Nintendo ascend to 1 or 2 in the industry and have someone like Microsoft, the Xbox, a far superior piece of technology and hardware, basically say, "We'll never beat you." Now, if you're interested in what he did say they can do, Great Games isn't even it. He said Great Games isn't a direct solution to the commentary around Xbox reputation compared to Nintendo and Sony. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation when everybody built their digital library of games. Everybody who walks into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of those 3 ecosystems, and he's including Microsoft in that. But now that Nintendo has such a nice digital library, even though they really didn't with Wii U, it shows how much ground they've gained. Nintendo didn't really have much building in the Xbox One generation, but even though they were far below Xbox One, because of Xbox One's inability to gain ground on Sony or continue to be above Nintendo, Nintendo completely jumped them. They completely leapfrogged them. What's the past tense of leapfrog? Leapfrogged. They leapfrogged them in this generation. And now Phil Spencer is misremembering history that they didn't even beat the Wii U, which they did. But it's interesting that their entire strategy is basically like, we can't win, so what can we do different? And that's where Game Pass comes in as a service, and they want to be customer first, and they want to try to provide the most value, which I think is really smart. It must be kind of sad to know that you cannot beat your competitors. Even if you put out a great, strong console, and some would argue that the Xbox Series X can outperform even the PS5 graphically and hardware-wise. The Switch can't hold a freaking long tooth to the Xbox Series X or even the S at this point, but Nintendo still beats it. And Spencer admits that Starfield being amazing, or Hellblade 2 being amazing, or Fable 4 being amazing isn't even going to cut it. Nintendo has set themselves up in such a good way for the future, and as long as they don't completely bangle the bus, they will be a market industry leader forever. I mean, maybe not forever, but for our lifetime, as long as they keep the Switch trend going, and as long as there isn't some major shift in video games or a big industry collapse, Nintendo is in great hands and in a great place. So as we debate a Switch 2, a Switch Pro, what they're going to do, why their second half is so quiet, will they decide to coast or will they decide to push games? You got to know that Nintendo is in a good spot. And no matter what they do, we would much rather them be in this spot than the spot they were in last generation. Or honestly, in Spencer and Xbox's spot. I mean, Game Pass is great, and it would be nifty if Nintendo had a similar service, but I kind of would prefer to have hit after hit after hit, and success breeds success, and allow them to invest 6 years in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and put out the best game they possibly can, because we're spending $60 on their regular first-party releases, rather than cashing in on a great Game Pass service. And you could argue Nintendo has tried to build up their own service, adding Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, bringing in N64. Their expansion pack has become something that is a pretty good deal as well. Maybe not as exciting as Microsoft's Game Pass, which will bring titles like Starfield free for Xbox Game Pass subscribers day one, which is really nifty. But as Spencer admits, that isn't enough. And there's no clear path to victory. I'm glad that Nintendo has a clear path, and it's just continue to release amazing games. Their strategy and our benefit line up. That's really neat, and I'm really glad. So whether you care about Xbox and their failings or their successes or not, it's pretty nice to know that Nintendo has established themselves in such a spot that Microsoft and Xbox, with far superior tech and a whole lot of cash and a whole lot of hopes and dreams, and at one point, an entire Call of Duty audience driving their system forward, he knows he can't beat Nintendo. That's remarkable compared to where we were a generation ago. So let me know what you think about Nintendo's awesome place in the industry and how you feel about Xbox if you have one or have looked at getting one. Like, it's Game Pass or nothing for them. And a failure like Redfall, well, it sucks, but it's not like an amazing Redfall would have even turned the tide completely. I feel like Xbox is in maybe a bit of a dangerous space. I don't want to predict doom and gloom, but I hope that they're able to get it together. I do not want a Sony Nintendo two-horse race in the future. I think Xbox can continue. I think Game Pass is building, but yeah, they're gonna have to redo some strategy or something and look at how they are approaching things, because right now their mind share is maybe at a, I don't want to say all-time low, because that was when they announced Xbox One would be always online, and oh gosh, Connect, but it's pretty low. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Love you lots. SwitchForce out.